To you guys about the backfire effect in audio. Hey folks, I'm Gene Delasello with Audioholics. I want to get a little philosophical with you guys today in this short video. I want to talk to you guys about what I think what's happening a lot of cases in audio is this thing called the backfire effect. And I'm going to define what this is for you and then point you to an article that I was reading recently. So the backfire effect is a cognitive bias that causes people who encounter evidence that challenges their beliefs to reject that evidence and to strengthen their support of the original stance. In fact, if you read the article that's linked up in the description below, it goes on and it basically says once you present someone with facts that goes against their belief system, they'll double down on their original belief, even though the evidence is there to show them that their belief is wrong or what they think about something is not accurate. And you could think about this in relativity in terms of anything in life. Think about how there's still flat earthers out there that believe the earth is flat, despite the fact that we have satellite imagery and we've been outside of the atmosphere and we could see it ourselves. That video footage is not enough for them. Or the people that actually think the moon landing was a hoax, despite the fact that we have the rockets, we have the proof, we have the video footage. And if you're one of those conspiracy theorists about the moon landing is a hoax, I don't know what to tell you, my friend. All I could tell you is it's good that you have your own beliefs, but they're not always right, and you might wanna open your mind to facts because facts do matter. And I wanna relate this now to audio. When you think about the first topic we often review on this channel is about cables. I spend great effort on measuring cables, explaining to you the science that I've learned as a degreed electrical engineer and as a telecom engineer. I spent about 7 or 8 years before I was doing Audioholics full time to really understand the macrocosms of electricity and how it goes through transmission lines and all this other stuff. So I really have a good understanding of signal propagation. And I've educated over the last couple of decades on cables and why a lot of the cable science or pseudoscience, I should say, that the exotic cable companies feed you is nonsense. It's just not based on any truth. It's nothing provable, nothing measurable. And I show you the measurements on what's good and what's not good in cables, but it doesn't matter because the skeptic will come into the comments and they'll basically say, well, you can't listen with your measurements. You have to listen with your ears. They don't understand the placebo effect and how cited tests are flawed. And I'll get into that in a little bit. But the bottom line is no matter how much evidence, like for example, that AudioQuest video I did showing that battery backups, that battery system on their cable was nonsense. It actually made the performance worse because of noise. And then the cable itself didn't measure that great. People doubled down. And I think some of that has to do with the fact that there were probably owners of that cable that were some offended by my analysis. And that's unfortunate thing in life. I mean, I know people like to defend their purchase decisions. They don't want to be told that something they bought doesn't live up to expectations. But that's just one of those examples that I was talking about the backfire effect, that when I try to educate about cables, there's people that have their belief system that are pro cable and anti-science that just double down on their beliefs. Another one is on subwoofer placement. We've had guys from Harman, Dr. Todd Welty, Dr. Sean Olive, Dr. Floyd Toole. We've had them help us co-author articles and also guests on our YouTube channels to talk about room modes, to talk about eigenvalues, to talk about the best placements to put your subwoofers so you can get even bass in every location. Then you could use the EQ to effectively flatten it out and get good response. And we would give you these guidelines. Let's say it's a rectangular room and you'd want to put a sub in each corner if you could get 4 subs. But there's people that'll argue that say you need to elevate the subwoofer off the floor, or you need to put it in weird multiples of the room. I mean, just much of what they say is just fallacy. It's not based on any type of room analysis or any measurements. It's more on the gut. Now, at the end of the day, if that's what you prefer, and you like putting a subwoofer in a location that may not be optimal, but it's good for your seat, That's fine. What we're trying to do when we give you guidelines on subwoofer placement or we give you guidelines on bass management is we're trying to help you set up a basic system that's going to perform, most likely it's going to perform consistently well if you follow our guidelines. And then of course you always tweak it towards your room situation. But we're trying to give you something that's repeatable, something that we know that works in most rooms. And that's why we have pretty strict guidelines on ideal locations for subwoofers and ideal rooms, because we know how that is, how it behaves. The next one I want to do, and this is recent, we just did a video. We had John Traunwieser, a world famous mixing engineer. The guy produced Star Wars movies. He mixed, he's mixing, I think, a new Indiana Jones movie. He's mixed Hunger Games, Lorax, you name it. The guy has a lot of mixing for Atmos under his belt. So he understands the mixing process for both theatrical as well as in the home, because he's doing both mixes. And then he's not only mixing, but he's listening in a reference Dolby Atmos 7.1.4 speaker layout. And we talked very succinctly about how those height channels need to be above you, kind of in a near field location to the main listening area, front and behind it. But there's people that still argue you got to put the speakers in the corners of the room because, you know, I did some experiment in my garage and it sounded better when I did up mixing. You know, that might be great for one case, but generally speaking, if a movie is mixed in a certain speaker layout and Dolby has guidelines towards following that layout, then to get the best results consistently is you got to follow the guidelines. You got to follow the science of how things work. And that's just another example of the backfire effect in audio. And then this is a big one, is the blind listening test. Anybody that's involved in any type of scientific process that wants rigor and that wants repeatability and consistency and wants to eliminate biases, you need to use a blind test, a blind listening test. This is especially true in situations with when the audio stimulus that you're comparing is very minute. So if there's any chance that a cable has audibility, one cable versus the other, the only way to remove the sighted bias, because you could look at that cable and actually think it's going to sound better, or you could look at it and know it's more expensive, you think it's going to sound better, you got to eliminate that from the equation. So that way you're just listening with your ears and not with your eye and brain mechanism. That really messes up your whole outlook on the result. And this, nobody's immune to it. Hey, I could fall victim to sighted tests as well. I could look at something and say, that speaker looks good just looking at it. I mean, it sounds good just looking at it. But you really, if you want to do something with any type of rigor and you want to have consistent results and you want to know those results are valid, you got to eliminate the sighted bias. And there's a lot of audiophiles that reject any kind of blind listening test. They go on for pages on the forum saying how blind listening tests are evil and non-revealing. And the last example I want to do, and this kind of relates to the blind listening test about backfire effect in audio, is measurements. You know, we'll go and recently I measured a NAD M23 Class D amplifier, and I declared it the best measuring amplifier that we've measured to date. And there were people that just could not accept that fact. They had a comment in the YouTube below in the related thread that how that Class D is garbage, it's low fidelity. No, it's not low fidelity when I'm measuring distortion that's below the limits of my test gear, $40,000 HDMI analyzer. But because it's Class D, somehow it's got a negative stigma. And they'll hold on to their Class A ideology. And Class A is an inefficient design. There's really no purpose of using Class A amplification anymore for power. We've got such good linearity now with Class D and even Class AB. Why waste all that energy on heat? I could understand if you want to do it at the preamp level, you could go and do Class A because there's really not much of a sacrifice there. But anytime you're drawing power, getting 25, 30% efficiency versus 80, 90, 95% is a big difference in terms of not only money savings, but power delivery to your loudspeaker. That way you're not limited by the wall current. So guys, these are just several examples I wanted to go over with you on the backfire effect in audio. I'm curious, how do you think we can overcome this and minimize it? Because everybody is potentially subject to it, myself included. And it may not just be for audio, maybe for different avenues of your life. I'm wondering how we could approach this when it's relating to audio to kind of help convince people to look at the facts and don't just dismiss something because it goes against your belief system. Guys, I hope you guys found this video useful. Don't forget about our Patreon channel at patreon.com/audioholics. We appreciate your support. You get direct access to me if you want to suggest video topics or ask questions. And until next time, my friends, keep listening.